Yeah.
Even look at Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, his genius was not his technical aptitude. The predecessor to Facebook, I mean, I was at Harvard with him at the same time. He was a year ahead of me back then, was hot or not. This or this. Right? So
Yeah.
sort of taking these native base human instincts and just picking at them and exploiting them. Now does that mean that we should regulate the companies and prevent them from doing that? No, 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 no. You're getting it all wrong. We need to revive the very institutions at the level of the family, at the level of the nation, at the level of the community, at the level of even our religious institutions, to fill that void of meaning and purpose and identity that then prepares us for a society where in free market capitalism, we don't need to apologize for the fact that some guy ends up with more green pieces of paper than the other. Who cares if we fetishize those green pieces of paper? The thing that really matters is that we have civic equality as citizens, that we're grounded in the forms of identity that really matter. And that's where I want to see the conservative movement do better in stepping up to fill that void.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're making a distinction that I try to bring up all the time, that it's perceived oppression, not necessarily even real oppression.
That's right.
It's something that's made up in their mind. So where do you think big tech fits in this? When we hear things like, well, okay, all of this gender stuff and all of this woke stuff, it's pushed on all of kids in America through TikTok, but it's banned in China. Do you think that there might be a connection there?
Yeah, or even the parent company that owns TikTok in China actually uses it to educate kids on math and science and reading, which is different than the way we're educating people here. So look, I mean, mostly when I'm talking about big tech or the term big tech, I'm usually talking about the censorship debate, which I've views on, but that's not what I'm going to talk about here. This is a different issue, and I think it's an important one where. Look, one of the things I often say, not to get too philosophical here, but will just for a second, is that virtue is not a product of capitalism. Okay, virtue is a precondition for capitalism to do its work. And what I mean by that is that, look, a simpler way of saying that is capitalism would be the perfect system for organizing a society's affairs if our wants actually matched our needs. And to the extent that there's anything wrong with negative externalities of capitalism, it can be explained entirely, I believe, by the daylight between our wants and needs. And I think part of what the stakeholder capitalism movement gets wrong is that it demands of these capitalist actors the need to cultivate virtue that should have been cultivated through institutions that predate capitalism or capital into society, the family,
families, perhaps.
Church, yeah,
right.
Religion, whatever it is, where you pray, national identity, patriotism, at the level of the community, at the level of the family, absolutely. So where do we see this play out as it relates to tech companies? And where does the debate even get confused, even by conservatives over the last year, for example, was when I saw the story break out by the Wall Street Journal doing reporting that Facebook knew that the young teen girls who were using Instagram had body image insecurity issues that were fueled and made worse by Instagram, and they didn't do anything about it. And by the way, they knew that they were making anger management issues amongst their angry users even worse, but didn't do anything about it. And so, conservative media called me to talk about that issue because I had been a long critic of censorship by big tech. And so, okay, let's hit them hard. They knew and they didn't do anything about it. And actually, my view was no, you're getting this all wrong, actually. We should not, as a society, want Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey to be our priests and rabbis to virtue. In fact, we should want a society that cultivates the kind of self-confidence among young teen girls that don't leave them vulnerable to the insecurities that these algorithms are designed to prey on. And I think that we miss the fact that we can cultivate that sense of psychic fortitude and virtue in the offline world so that these professionally created algorithms aren't so well equipped to pick at and prey on those insecurities by knowing what you click on versus what you don't click on, and use that to create a window to your soul that sees your soul with greater clarity than you see yourself. That's just the antecedent condition of the divergence of your want and need, the deficit of virtue that allowed the modern demonic algorithm empowered version of modern capitalism and technology, the industry part of it, to prey on those insecurities. It's kind of like the equivalent of a teen girl in the 1990s, a Virginia Slims manufacturer selling cigarettes to teen girl who had body image insecurity issues back then. It's the same thing all over again, when the thing we need to be addressing is the generational insecurity in the first place, and cultivating that psychic fortitude that actually allows capitalism to then do its work, to sell us the goods and services we want more effectively, when we already have a deep-seated self-confidence and understanding of who we are as people that predate our identity as capitalists. And so this is one of the solutions I talk about in the book is, one of the places I want to see the conservative movement do better is to provide an affirmative answer to those questions about identity, about national identity, about individual identity, and to talk not just about the revival of freedom through system of free market capitalism, where I'm one of the greatest champions for exactly that model, but also to talk about a revival of, let's say, civic identity, our identity as citizens, and the psychic fortitude that we require as citizens, and the civic duty that comes in our capacity as a citizen from our identity as just a capitalist who's a participant in that economy. And so what did big tech do? They called that bluff. Modern social media called the bluff of a generation that didn't know what they actually wanted, and then preyed on those psychic insecurities to build multi-trillion-dollar companies that were not tech companies. They were psychologically shrewd companies that understood that they could understand you better with their algorithms than you could understand yourself. And maybe if you understood yourself even more effectively, that might have actually prevented modern social media from having the toxic effects that it's since had.
Vivek, am I a crazy conspiracy theorist, or is it possible that for all those years that BuzzFeed had everyone clicking on those nonsensical polls of what do they like better, this or that perhaps that had a little something, BuzzFeed and many of these other sites, but BuzzFeed, which is now completely collapsed, was like the prime purveyor of all of us clicking all these things, and they would, as you sort of alluded to there, ultimately they would know what we actually want more than we can even understand.
That's not a conspiracy. That's a reality. I mean, even look at Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, his genius was not his technical aptitude. The predecessor to Facebook, I mean, I was at Harvard with him at the same time. He was a year ahead of me back then, was hot or not, this or this. Right? So sort of taking these native base human instincts and just picking at them and exploiting them. Now, does that mean that we should regulate the companies and prevent them from doing that? No. You're getting it all wrong. We need to revive the very institutions at the level of the family, at the level of the nation, at the level of the community, at the level of even our religious institutions, to fill that void of meaning and purpose and identity that then prepares us for a society where in free market capitalism, we don't need to apologize for the fact that some guy ends up with more green pieces of paper than the other. Who cares? If we fetishize those green pieces of paper, the thing that really matters is that we have civic equality as citizens, that we're grounded in the forms of identity that really matter. And that's where I want to see the conservative movement do better in stepping up to fill that void in a way that it's completely abdicated any interest in actually taking on. That's part of what motivated me to say that, I just wasn't done with just woke Inc. Nation of Victims was about taking a crack. I'm not saying I have all the answers, but taking a crack at what fills that void of identity. What does it mean to be an American in the year 2022? If we don't have a good answer to that question, maybe we as a movement need to be stepping up to void and answer that question, or else you're just going to have that same poison continuing to fill that black hole of a vacuum of identity, rather than just taking a jackhammer to sort of weed out that poison one at a time. Maybe you try a different strategy of diluting the poison to irrelevance by filling it with a new, rich vision for what that identity could be that dilutes the poison to irrelevance.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.